Hey everyone, Midits here. In the Power Rangers series Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, there was a giant crossover between a bunch of different Power Rangers series. And in that series, we see Tommy able to turn into 5 different Rangers, all while using one Morpher. And he was using what was called the Master Morpher. As you can probably guess, the Master Morpher is a Morpher that lets you turn into any Ranger you have previously been. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about every single Power Ranger, which, if they had a Master Morpher, would be able to use one. And now, before we begin, I want to talk about 2 Ranger teams where I feel like it's important to talk about them at the beginning. First of all, this is going to be a quick one. The Dino Fury / Cosmic Fury team, there's a possibility that maybe they might be able to use the Master Morpher, but we're not sure because the series hasn't come out yet, so we don't know if the Cosmic Fury powers are a power-up of the Dino Fury powers or completely separate yet. So whether or not that team is able to use the Master Morpher, we won't know until Cosmic Fury comes out. And another team that I feel like it's really important to talk about them is the Mega Force team, because even though they do have access to every single other Ranger power, they would not be able to use the Master Morpher. That's because the Legendary Ranger mode in Super Mega Force is not a completely separate morph. It is just a power-up, similar to all the other power-ups that are across the show. And I feel that the best way to describe it is, if you're using the same Morpher to turn into these 2 different Ranger powers, then they're not separate powers, which you need a Master Morpher to use. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about those 2 teams, and now let's begin at the very beginning with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, with the original 6 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, there are only 2 Rangers which would be able to use the Master Morpher. Now, besides Tommy, who obviously can use it, since we do see him use it in Super Ninja Steel, the other Ranger who will be able to use it is Jason. This is because he has access to both the Red Mighty Morphin Ranger power and the Gold Zeo Ranger power. But we're not done that quickly, because besides the original 6 Rangers, there are 4 more Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that replace some of the other Rangers later on in the show. And out of these 4, 3 of them would have access to the Master Morpher. These would be Adam, who would have access to both the Black Mighty Morphin Ranger power, as well as the Green Zeo Ranger power and the Green Turbo Ranger power, Rocky, who would have access to the Red Mighty Morphin Ranger power and the Blue Zeo Ranger power, and lastly, Cat, who would have access to the Pink Mighty Morphin, Zeo, and Turbo powers. And those are all the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers who would have access to the Master Morpher. And now, we can skip Alien Rangers, because none of them have any access to the Master Morpher, and so let's head on to Zeo. Now with Zeo, there's only one new Ranger who would have access to the Master Morpher, that being Tanya, who would have the powers of both the Zeo Yellow Ranger and the Turbo Yellow Ranger. That's pretty much it for Zeo, but luckily in Turbo there is going to be a lot more, so let's head on to the next part. Now, in Turbo, halfway through the season, the entire team with the exception of Justin gets replaced, and now all 4 Rangers who joined the team have access to the Master Morpher. These Rangers being TJ, who would be both the Turbo Red Ranger and the In-Space Blue Ranger. There's also Ashley, who is also the Turbo, as well as the In-Space Yellow Ranger. Then you have Cassie, who's the Pink Ranger for both Turbo and In Space. Lastly, we have Carlos, who is the Green Ranger in Turbo, and the Black Ranger in Power Rangers in Space. And now, here's the thing. This is pretty much the last team to be able to use the Master Morpher until all the way later on to Power Rangers SPD. This means we're reaching the end, so let's go to SPD. Now in SPD, there are only 2 Rangers which could have access to the Master Morpher. First of which is Sky, who would have access to both the SPD Blue Ranger power and the SPD Red Ranger power. And lastly is Bridge, who would have 3 different Ranger powers, being the SPD Green Ranger power, the SPD Blue Ranger power, and the SPD Red Ranger power. And now, that is every single Ranger who could potentially use the Master Morpher. This was an interesting video to make. It's nice being able to talk about Power Rangers since that isn't something I've really been able to do on the channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did enjoy it, check out some other content. And if you really enjoyed this video, subscribe so you'll see when my latest content comes out. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.